The format that we have, though, is to ask Peter Rogers to respond to this, and just to let you know that Peter's career has spanned diplomacy, journalism, writing and teaching. As Jakarta correspondent for the Sydney Morning Herald and the Age, he was named the Australian Journalist of the Year for his reporting on East Timor. Peter's diplomatic career included postings in Bangladesh, Indonesia and Egypt, and appointments as the Australian High Commissioner to the Caribbean and the Australian Ambassador to Israel. Peter is currently a visiting fellow at the ANU's Asia Pacific College of Diplomacy and the Australian Defence College's Centre for Defence and Strategic Studies, and an adjunct senior fellow at the University of the South Pacific. He has written 2 books on the Middle East, Herzl's Nightmare, One Land, Two Peoples, and Arabian Plights, The Future of the Middle East. He's also the author of prize-winning short fiction. I don't know how he finds time to sort of get out of bed and do all those other things. So busy must you be. But the floor is yours to respond.
Thanks, Andrew, and I'd like to say it's a pleasure to be here, and indeed it is, but what a pity we have to be here. And what we've heard, I think, is as lucid, compelling, insightful and depressing account of events in the Middle East, events between Israel and Palestine, as we are likely to hear, and Dr. Shriver has lost none of her touch. What I find particularly depressing about it is that the issues that she's run us through, particularly the issues of occupation and settlements, are exactly the same issues that were at the forefront of discussion and debate, and for a short while negotiation when I was actually physically on the ground in Israel 20 odd years ago. But I won't say the situation hasn't changed, because it has. It's got much worse. I think that is the depressing element in this. She mentioned one word, and I'm going to frame what I have to say to you with that word, and that word was integrity. It's something that's missing in Australia's approach to the Israeli-Palestinian dispute. It's been missing in action for quite some time, and it's about time we restored integrity. There'll be elements of Australian foreign policy, Australia's international relations, that will continue to cause right-minded, right-feeling people enormous grief. Here is one issue in which we can show, I think we can lead the way. We can help lead it. We certainly won't lead it. We're in the tail, but we can actually redress some of the imbalance. And it seems to me that the ALP conference, and this is what I want to frame, how I'm going to frame my comments. The ALP National Conference has not only the opportunity, but the responsibility of putting integrity back into Australia's approach to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. For too long, Australia's approach has been beholden to views expressed, and I'll be frank here, I'm no longer a diplomat, by a narrow segment of the Australian community. They've been framed by allowing Israel and its supporters to set the agenda. And it's high time, it seems to me, that we listened to those in Bankstown and those in Auburn and those in many other suburbs throughout Australia more than we listened to some of those in Caulfield. Australia and the ALP, and indeed some of Australia's friends, meekly offer the mantra of a two-state solution. We cannot and we should not bury that concept. But it strikes me as absolutely absurd that Australia continues to peddle the mantra while pretending that one of those two states doesn't exist. It's just ludicrous. It does meet in some measure the 4 criteria that are accepted internationally as needed for the recognition of statehood. And where it doesn't meet them, and where it is weak, is because of occupation. It's because Israel does not allow Palestine to do so. No other reason. That's putting it in its simplest and most complex form. And it's time to change. It's time to change for a few reasons. One, because change is moral, it's the moral and it's the right thing to do. It will restore some measure of integrity, at least in part of Australia's international dealings. It's also politically smart, because it serves to protect the interests of Israelis and Palestinians, and in a broader sense, Australians. I do not believe the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is a win-lose situation. I think I would find that a very despairing reality. But the reality for the Labor Party, the reality of Australia, is that Australia can be a friend of both Israel and Palestine. Australia should be a friend of both Israel and Palestine. And when friends behave badly, then true friends tell them. They don't hide. And I'm afraid we do hide pretty dramatically. So what we need, not just from the ALP National Conference, but what we need from Australia's political leaders, actually what we need at a community level, is renewed courage, or courage perhaps, and the capacity to think about what the headlines will be. Not tomorrow, but in 20 years' time. Because without change, without support for an independent Palestinian state, without support for that state, I am depressingly confident that the headlines in 20 years' time will make the headlines of today and the headlines of 20 years ago look rosy in comparison. So what matters is that those at the ALP National Conference, and those in all sides of politics, and those in the community, accept this challenge, that we must deal with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in a more mature, a more moral, a more pragmatic approach, because the reality is that it comes down to people, and the people of Israel and the people of Palestine deserve nothing less. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Peter. I'll now call upon our three speakers who have joined us on the panel, and I'll introduce them on a piece, if you'll forgive me, and we'll then ask them to address you for 3 minutes, after which there'll be time for questions and discussion. Of course, that should not be in any way, shape or form the end of our discussion. Even though we're scheduled to conclude at 7:15, it's very clear that this discussion needs to go on, especially within these walls and within the processes of the Labor Party. Firstly, I'd like to mention Bishop George Brown, a retired Anglican priest, who, when he retired, was the Bishop of Canberra and Goulburn. He is the president of the Australia Palestine Advocacy Network, and his engagement with Palestinian concerns began several decades ago when he was involved in training Anglican priests from Palestine. Sivan Barak is an Israeli-Australian human rights activist and executive member of the Australian Jewish Democratic Society. She previously lived for many years in Israel and remains a frequent visitor. She is a contributor to the anthology Beyond Tribal Loyalties, Personal Stories of Jewish Peace Activists, and Sivan is a textile designer and currently studies social work. And to my immediate left, Bassam Dali is an Australian Palestinian born in Israel. He is the professor at the School of Mechanical Engineering at the University of Adelaide, and is the co-founder and executive member of the Australian Friends of Palestine Association, and is the founder and convener of the annual Edward Said Memorial Lecture in Adelaide. He is an executive member of the Australian Palestine Advocacy Network. So we might start with George.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being here. As you've heard, my name is George Browning. I've just returned, by the way, from Palestine, Israel. And if you've been there recently or at all, you can't help but come home and be pretty angry about it. It's really, the human rights violations are beyond belief, really, from what's supposed to be a democratic civil society. I've got 3 reasons why this conference, that's probably not most of you, but the delegates of this conference should be voting for the recognition of a Palestinian state. And that the argument that it's up to the 2 parties concerned, that is Israel and Palestine, to work it out and everybody else should butt out, is totally wrong. Reason number 1. The current situation began in 1947, as you know. The whole situation in the Middle East was actually established after the First World War. The boundaries of Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, etc. were established by the Western community, not by the people themselves. And after the Second World War, as you know, Israel was given, as you've just heard from Hannah Ashrawi, 55% of historic Palestine. Now, in that establishment, there was a clear understanding that the rights of the indigenous people, the Palestinians, their religion, their ethnicity, their culture would be protected. It has not been. Quite the reverse. It's been diminished, and so many of them have been driven away. And it is utterly the responsibility of the international community to be part of the solution. And because there's been no solution for such a long period of time, it is absolutely incumbent upon the international community to get in there and be part of the solution and to put pressure on Israel. And unless pressure is put on Israel, painful pressure, they will not change. So it is incumbent upon this conference to vote in favour of the recognition of the state of Israel. Number 2, the whole of the Middle East really is not simply a matter of independent states. It's actually a piece of global geography. The reason why it is because so many things meet there. The 3 so-called Semitic religions meet there. Islam, Christianity and Judaism meet there. East and West meet there. So many of the world's interests are there. The focus of Sunni religion is Saudi Arabia. The focus of Shia religion is Iran. The focus of Judaism is Israel. And Christianity obviously has a significant interest there. It isn't possible simply to wipe one's hands of the problem. The international community has to take responsibility for a situation which affects everybody. And it's absolutely nonsense of the Zionists to say that the problems there do not exacerbate other issues. They jolly well do, sadly. Wish they didn't, but they do. And while this conflict remains unresolved, then the problem that we face of terrorism and the aggravation that is felt by other peoples will increase and intensify. You cannot say it, but it won't. It does. And I've just been there, and I've seen it for myself. And the anger that is felt about the severe injustice just boils over into actions which are not defendable, but they're understandable. So for that second reason, this conference must take action and recognise that there is a right to be addressed here, and that right is the freedom of the Palestinian people. Reason number 3. This whole business has been going on for decades, and while it's going on, Israel benefits and Palestine loses. It isn't a matter of there's a status quo. Often when there's a conflict, the 2 people are in deadlock, but there's no deadlock here. There's no deadlock. Israel is gaining ground the whole time. It's gaining ground geographically. Hopefully it's not now gaining ground politically, but it's certainly gaining ground economically. I don't know whether you realise or not, but the figures from last year indicate that Israel gained something like 7 billion Australian dollars as a result of its occupation of Palestine. Now, it's not going to give up Palestine easily, either economically, politically, ethnically, or any other way. You've heard that this is the most right-wing government that's ever existed, probably in Israel. We've certainly got a right-wing government here in Australia too, but that's another matter. But for that third reason, this situation cannot be allowed to continue. It has to stop, because the longer it goes, the more Israel gains and the more Palestine loses. And if this conference truly believes in a 2-state solution, to delay is actually to deny that reality. If you believe in it, you've got to stand for it, and stand for it means to vote for the rights of an independent Palestinian state. My time's up, thank you very much.
Sudan, if I can give the floor on you.
It's actually Sivan, but I'm used to being more than
This is Australia, comrade.
Yeah.
Please don't have anybody's name, sorry.
to start with, I'm actually an Israeli who lives in Caulfield, and so it is a place from Caulfield. And there are- No. And there's quite a few here. Look, I would like to speak of this 3 minutes, so I'd just like to add maybe another angle that you maybe don't bring up, because I have experienced it as an Israeli. I think the reason for why I want to state is because my family legacy has been such that we've lost hope as Israelis. It started with my grandparents who left in the 20s, early 30s, Poland, to find some hope and peace in Palestine. They went through the War of Independence, hoping that that would be the end and then there would be peace. My father went through the War of the 73 War, hoping, raising us, hoping that that would be the end and then there would be peace. I went through the army myself, hoping, that there would not be, my children wouldn't have to go through it. I married an Israeli who fought in the Lebanon War, and we hoped that then there would be peace. And then 20 years ago, actually, in November, will be when we were at my family. My daughter was 3.5. We went to the what's now called the Rubin Square for one of the biggest moments of hope, which was the demonstration for peace with Rabin and Shimon Peres standing on the podium singing, "Let's sing for peace." There was hope. It was a really great feeling that this is it, it's going to change. And then, of course, he was assassinated, we all know. For me, that was the end of hope, I guess, in very many ways, and I decided that I couldn't raise my child, my second child. My son came through, he's 19 now. There was no way I could stay there and let him go through the army. We need it because we're not doing really well as Jews, as Israelis. We're obviously, 70 years of conflict, no change, it's just getting worse. Our children are paying a terrible price. Our parents are paying a terrible price. Our men, our sons, our brothers, our uncles are deeply damaged by this conflict, and really we need help. And so I think maybe this will happen and this will change it, and maybe then it will bring some hope, which is what we need. So please, vote for it.
10%.